show. So I really love the character Cisco from Deep Space Nine. The minute I saw that he was the captain, I was like, yes, I am so about this show. The reason why I wanted to be on this panel because I I just love the idea of talking about the rise of diversity, especially in the characterization and the stories of women of color, because it's already hard to get very diverse stories of just women in general, but having the fact that we have more shows that are showing a wider range of women is just glorious to me. I guess we can go into the questions that were brought up in the description. Um, I guess the first thing we could tackle is what are the problems with this new rise of representation? Oh, I can't talk today. Sorry.
Representation.
Yeah.
All right. I would say because it would operate under the Highlander theory, there can be only one. And that's what's unique about Sleepy Hollow is that they were very intentional about making that a diverse cast from day one. And you didn't have to search, like it was right there. Elementary is a little bit different, but what I like about Elementary is that yes, there's Joan, but they did not dismiss the fact that New York itself is a diverse place to live and that these people are in the background and the foreground. That's important to me because most shows about New York, unless it's a cop show, is usually like a whole bunch of white people, possibly a greengrocer or a bodega owner on a corner, and then everybody else has like disappeared from the neighborhood or wherever they happen to be living. I'm like you, I punched out of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like really early. And I feel sad because I really like Mignon. I followed her, from ER through Stargate Universe, where that part was kind of, but she was a lesbian in that one. I was like, yes. But so I want to support her. If it didn't mean I had to support that show, because you don't make me wait 12 episodes for it to get good. I have a lot of TV time that I do what you have. But yeah, there being only one theory, you really do have to look at producers and showrunners and say you need to build it in front load from the beginning. Otherwise you will get like token-esque sorts of feels even if that wasn't your intention.
And that's like, I was gonna say I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., out of all of these shows, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is the one that's not doing the most harm. Well, it's the one that's not doing it as well as the other shows because your only female of color really is Ming-Na, and like that's it. And you'll have, and even like with men of color, they'll come in for a short period of time and they'll die or explode, or they'll tell you that he's one of the main characters and then it turns out he's not going to be back for like half the season. And it's just it. So Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they need to work on that definitely. They need to get more female characters of color in there, and they also. The stoicness of Ming-Na's character bothers me a lot because you see the other characters building these relationships with everybody else, and you see the other female characters like this one is smart and this one is this one is that, and you get to see them be vulnerable and do all these things. And Ming-Na is just there to go, okay, I kick people in the face, and I do it for what's his face because I'm loyal to him, and now I'm just gonna go sit in a corner somewhere.
Yeah, because I'm scared that because I'm scared that they are setting her up to be like the stereotype dragon lady.
Yes.
And I just don't want to see that. It's been overdone. It's making her into this one-dimensional character that you want to root for her, but there's nothing you can like. There's no meat to it. So.
And it's the same thing. Somebody brought this up the other day, but it's the same thing that happened with Mulan in Once Upon a Time, where Mulan is like, what they did with the character of Mulan is they just kind of made her flat. And they could have gone somewhere great with it, but they just didn't. And it's really bad.
I have a quick question. Am I the only here who's actually stuck with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Okay.
That's okay.
That's okay, I just,
Now is your time to convince us to come back.
well, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. There actually is another relatively central female character, although she's one of the bad guys. The Flower Girl has actually started taking a far bigger picture at the end of the season.
Okay.
She's actually really developed. And the other thing that I actually like that they did with Ming-Na near the end is the payoff of her being in a relationship with,
Agent Coulson, that's his
no,
name.
not Agent Coulson, the
other one.
Ward.
Triplet?
Ward.
Oh.
Ward.
I checked out at the right time.
They ended up in a relationship for a while. But the payoff of it was that you actually got to see moments of her being vulnerable, including at the end when we find out, by the way, that, spoiler alert, anybody gonna be pissed off at me?
No.
Oh, good.
Don't do it.
That we find out that Ward is actually working for Hydra. And Ming-Na kicks his butt. And when she brings him to Coulson, Coulson says, "Did you get all of your feelings out?" And she looks at Coulson and says, "Is he still alive?" And Coulson goes, "I'm glad you held a little bit back." So even though she's still very stoic, and I continue to be worried that they won't expand her character enough, there are glimmers of hope.
It's the
Really?
reason why I never liked him.
And, you know, just to get back to the whole, like, being only one thing, there's Arrow.
Yes.
Okay, I copped to suddenly watching Arrow because I had nothing else to do on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock before Criminal Minds. So, the character of Amanda Waller. If you know anything about DC Comics and Amanda Waller used to be fat. And older. And they called her the Wall. And when they rebooted into the new 52 for DC, they made her very, very thin. And kind of model pretty and everything. So when they embodied that on the television show, and here's the thing, I love the actress playing her because it's Cynthia Addai Robinson, and she was on Spartacus where she like chopped people's heads off and shit. But it's hard for me to see her as the Wall because she doesn't have the same gravitas of, I can do these things to you and you're not gonna be able to do a thing to me about it and nobody will ever know. I was like, yeah, you just look pretty. Yeah, Amanda Waller's a badass. She scared Batman. And I was like, you would not scare Batman. And that's kind of the thing when you get off the major stations and you end up over on the CW, it's a different world. Because you have her on Arrow, there was at least one other woman of color, I think on the Tomorrow People, which was canceled.
Yes.
And there's somebody else I'm thinking of, where I was like, you know, the CW kind of front loads. There's Kat Graham, who was on The Vampire Diaries as Bonnie the Witch, and there's like fuckery with her too. So you may have a better chance of survival and character development on a major network, or possibly TNT. But when you hit the CW, there's the so skewed toward youth thing, and everybody's pretty, and character development suffers. So in a way, I kind of, you know, I'm like, yeah, there's women of color there, but then everybody suffers on a CW show. However, there is, with the Flash coming, there is another woman of color character because it's Iris West. What? Yes. So we'll see how that happens this fall. And again, it'll be something that I watch because I'm on the way to watching something else. But I want to give it a chance, and possibly even better because there's two black people. It's also Jesse Martin. Two whole black people. Arrow has two whole black people.
Yes.
You know, and he's not dead yet.
He's not dead. Do you know how many times he got shot on Arrow and he gets back up? I was like,
What?
Yes, I have lots of Arrow feels because of the character of Diggle. I thought like at the first episode he was gonna fight it, but he's actually survived for 2 seasons and he has a rich backstory and he's important to the plot. And just in position to say Amanda Waller. Hopefully next season will be better. And then I have problems with I'm having a blank moment.
Okay.
What does she do?
What you do?
On the island. Shadow.
Shadow. Yes.
I really loved her character, and then she gets freaked, and I'm like, ah.
And then she's somebody crazy headband.
All right, she's Slade Wilson's crazy headcanon because of the Mercury. Sorry, first. But yeah, mostly on CW, I would like it for the character to not end up either getting rich or becoming evil, and just to have like more rich women characters, strong women characters. But I have hope for Arrow.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback about Amanda Waller and like Arrow, I was surprised that I think it was Smallville when they would start breaking in, and they had Pam Grier play
Amanda Waller.
Yeah, and I was surprised at that because I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then when they did the reboot, I was like, well, okay, sure, let's go with this, I guess. It's just kind of weird. It just, when you think about the backstory, it's just kind of weird to just suddenly change her physical attributes just to make her look pretty for
Just the
Sad.
CW.
Yeah.
Yeah, the CW part. Yeah.
So I guess we kind of start touching on this about like where it works in some of the shows and where does it fail. So do we have any major fails on shows that seem to never going to get fixed, and we should just leave that show alone?
True Blood, True Blood, True Blood, everybody already knows that Tara. Everything bad that happens in Bonton happens to all the brown people. Like, there's apparently a whole section of Bonton that is like an entire black section of Bonton because her mother, and there's a preacher, and there's a whole church full of black people, but you never see them, right? Then you have Tara, who goes through every single possible horrible thing that she could possibly go to in dealing with these vampires and being treated like she's an awful person for fighting back against it or for saying this sucks, this is messed up, I shouldn't be treated like this, I'm a human being. Then you have the visible population of True Blood go up 50% by adding one brown person in one season, and then going down that 50% because that person gets killed off in the next season. Like, True Blood, it started off so good because you had Tara, who she was angry, but you could see kind of why she was angry and what she was dealing with, and especially when you see her mom, and then you have Lafayette, and you see that he is, but also Lafayette is a weird area in queer stereotypes, where it's like, okay, he does this, but at the same time, he's still allowed to be masculine and stand up for his cousin when he needs to, and this, that, and the other. And it started off so well, and then in like season 2, they were like, oh, yeah, let's just forget all of that and just do something really dumb. And True Blood is my main issue with genre TV. I used to love True Blood so much. It just went so bad.
I would piggyback on that one of the things that really irritated me about True Blood, I loved the fact that Tara was a person of color, because in the books she's not.
Yeah.
But then they took away all of the positive things that happened to her in the books.
Yes.
She gets married, she has kids, she's happy.
And Suki
Oh my God,
actually
happy.
is a friend to her.
And Suki actually is a good friend to her instead of essentially getting Pam to do the vampire equivalent of raping her. Really, people. So, True Blood. I love the show for other reasons at times, because let's face it, there's lots of naked men. But and they didn't kill Lafayette, and I was really happy they didn't kill Lafayette.
Because he dies in the first book.
Because he dies in the first book.
And that was mostly because fans were like, oh, don't let it be Lafayette, please. Don't let it be
Please
Lafayette.
don't let it be Lafayette. But yeah. Oh, and the other one where I really wish they were doing better things is Game of Thrones. Because the actual books have so much racial diversity that doesn't show up in the actual series. So that's another place.
With the Dornish people.
Especially with the Dornish people.
The Dornish people are very polychromatic in the book, but then in the TV show, the TV show doesn't, The problem between Game of Thrones and books and the TV show is the TV show kind of stereotypes things to make it simpler.
Yes.
Whereas in the book, the whole point of the book is how complicated things are. Whatever.
Well, I stopped watching Once Upon a Time because, well, it seems like every man of color who wasn't charming would get killed, and also, I started out good, like having like the store, come back to me on that one.
This question makes me angry.
It does, because like when stuff fails, it fails and it hurts, and you're looking at your TV screen and you're looking at the schedule, and you're asking yourself, okay, why bother? Which was why when Sleepy Hollow happened, we were all like, holy crap, and she's alive by the end of the show. I probably have to pitch back pretty far, because I think I got to the point where I was like, you know what, if and not so much in the positive representation thing, because I'm like, okay, I'm willing to give you an amount of fail that I can live with. But yeah, True Blood was one, and especially when I got to see the original screen test of the original actress who played Tara. And I was like, okay, this is different. They actually pumped up some better actors. The original actress actually played Whitney on Passions. Yes, I know these things. So it was like, okay, so totally different person. And I've heard the actress talk about the part, and I just wonder, I'm like, what happened? And I've always wondered if it had to do with the fact that Tara had what they might have considered a boring story in the book, because Franklin was not that fucked up in the book. He was actually, I wouldn't say a nice guy, but he was decent.
He was pretty bad though.
But
there was a point where he was like, okay, I'm done with you, and then
Right.
sold her off to other vampire.
But like that original, like what, and I really love James Frayne.
Oh yeah.
And I'm
he's
just
always the
like,
bad guy.
oh, you're always the bad guy, kind of crazy. And this was something I was like, oh, like so in between like the kind of hot sex was also this really wacky, your boyfriend is out there, girl. I always wanted somebody to go, girl, he's a bad boyfriend. And that's part of it too, is like a lot of women of color not having somebody in their life to tell them, punch out, get out now, leave him, leave her, do whatever, get out of town, just do it. And that always drives me crazy.
And with True Blood, it took too long. I feel like it took too long. It took too long for Lafayette to have that conversation with Tara.
Yes.
Like, especially as them being family, and their relationship in the show is, other than Sookie, Lafayette's pretty much the only other person who kind of gets Tara. And so for it to take, for Sookie's selfish and we're just gonna push her off to the side because it was all about vampires, so she was not in a position. That's not an excuse, but she was just not gonna do it. But Lafayette, I feel like it took too long for them to go, okay, now Lafayette steps in and go, hey, this is a problem. This situation is bad for you. Even with the turning Tara into a vampire.
Yes.
It feels like they didn't have Lafayette object enough, because he knew, Sookie knew, but he knew she would never be down for this.
Yep.
And they were just like, well, we'll just have it happen further on, because some people like Tara and we don't want to kill her off, but at the same time,
Maybe you should.
Then maybe they shouldn't have shot her. If they didn't want to kill her off, then just don't shoot her.
Are you? Okay.
I don't know if you're doing
Oh, okay. I'll just say this one thing and we can. So I guess for my pick, it will be Vampire Diaries, because right now I'm hate watching it. Because I am so tired of Bonnie saving them
And getting nothing.
and getting nothing, because every season she loses a couple member of her family, and we find out that she's from this long line of witches that have pretty much been, getting screwed over by vampires. Like I'm just wondering why she just haven't just destroyed that whole town and just because every time all right, okay, but can you help us though? And I'm just really sick and tired because she's the only one that seemed to have sense in that freaking show, and only one that's saying, you know we about to die, right? And no one seems to care about her past, what she could do as a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think only recently her boyfriend, who cheated on her with a ghost. And we're not gonna even talk about how
As you do.
right, how she got screwed over because it seems like if you're a person of color in this show, you get screwed over.
Right.
So, like, the Asian ghost can't have him, and Bonnie keeps getting accidentally killed because of him. I'm just so done.
Okay, now that I have words back about Once Upon a Time, it seems to be like a disproportionate treatment of Regina versus Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin does like these horrible things, and yet fandom kind of treats him kind of like Twinkle in Leather Pants, whereas Regina's seen as, even when he tries, as ultimate evil. Not to say that he hasn't, but the fact that he's a person of color on in Storybrooke, it's just one of the major reasons why I stopped watching the show.
So I guess we can kind of take questions right now. So did you have?
Yeah, I just was wondering if you guys have any counterexamples to something that's a trend between all of these things we're talking about, where you have often this isolated character of color, and perhaps they have some family, but they don't have a community. They don't have a community of color, which is something I see with queer characters as well, and that I was just so lacking because it's so not what our lives look like. Most, there's obviously people who that is their lived experience, but by and large, among media representations, you see only that experience of the isolated person of color and their white friends. And I guess if you have seen counterexamples of that, I'd love to see them.
So the question was, are there any counter examples of the the lone person of color or gender or sexuality, whatever. So,
Sleepy Hollow.
yeah.
Sleepy Hollow is the big one right now because somebody brought this up the other day. You have two families of color, and they're kind of going in and out of each other's lives. Like you have Abby and her sister, and that's their community. They're each other's community in this town. And then you have Irving come in, and then when Irving comes in, you also see his wife and his daughter, and you get to see there's certain things in Sleepy Hollow where there's a cultural connection. Like there's a culture, like a lot of times when you're in a group of people, like when you're in a group of black people, like black people will see other black people and somebody will make a reference to something. And it's just kind of like a thing that you get. The Thomas Jefferson conversation in Sleepy Hollow, that was that thing. That Ichabod was going on and on about how Thomas Jefferson was this great man. And Abby and Irving kind of look at each other and then look at him and go, it's not exactly what you think it is. And that's something that, you're right, it's lacking in a lot of genres.
And that was so surprising because it's so rare.
Right, and that's one of the things that drew a lot of people to the show is it's like, oh, they're acknowledging something. They're acknowledging this. These two people are having one of those moments that I've had with other just random black people I've met on the street. Where it's like, oh, okay, they're getting that you can't have that one person of color in the setting because one, where did they come from? And two, how are they interacting? There has to be other people of color that they're interacting with. How do they find their sense of self without interacting with anybody but the same white people in town or the same straight people in town or whatever?
And part of it too is if you know anything about that area up around Sleepy Hollow, because it is a real town, there have been black people up there for a very long time, since the Revolutionary era. So for me, as being from New Jersey, like being steeped in the Revolutionary War thing as a kid, because it was like, this is your history. I was like, really? You've always known that people of color have kind of always been in the New York, New Jersey area for a very long time, and some of them were free, some of them were enslaved, but they stayed there. They didn't leave. And so I found it, because people were like, well, how could, it was something as simple as how could Abby and probably her sister get their hair done?
That's me, I wanna know,
And
because the only
I was like, here's the thing.
Up until that point.
There's the one episode where they meet the other foster parent, and she has another black kid. And I was like, there are other black people in that town. And their proximity to New York City is actually pretty close. So more than likely, if you didn't have a black hair salon there, they would just go into the city and get it done. And that's a train ride.
Or witchcraft.
Or witchcraft. Witching on the hair and the hot comb. But, you know, I mean, so it's possible to foregrounded that, but I'm actually hard pressed to think of outside of procedural shows. Genre is different. Procedural shows, people have whole communities that they live in, that they work in, that they go to the bar and they hang out. You know, enough of a bar that people can give you a side eye when you walk into the wrong one. But there's something about genre that, like, you're the only one. And I'm like, statistically, that's almost impossible. Unless you moved here for a job and you researched that job and you were like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to do this. And, you know, it makes me think of my dad when he was in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan in the Army, and him always trying to get transferred out because he was the only black guy in his unit. Because he's like, I wanted to go to Detroit. Because I knew I would be able to get my hair done in like Detroit and whatnot. And I have a picture of him in the snow with all these white guys and my dad. And he was like, for years, but it was a listening post. He's like, I can't leave. But it's that sort of thing. And genre has a way of just like, you're the only one and everybody thinks that's normal. And I'm like, no, that's not normal. That's crazy.
Actually, I don't know if it qualifies as genre to me, but everyone did mention Gina Torres and
Yes.
Suits.
Yes.
Jessica Pearson. I'm wondering, does she to me, she kind of comes across more as an anti-hero in that whole show, and kind of what do you think that means for representations of black women, and also just kind of, do we find more of these types outside of, you know, like the network, you know, shows, or are we seeing more of that in network shows now?
Okay, so let me know if I summed up your question right. So she mentioned Gina Torres on the show Suits, and she's kind of like a anti-hero. And what does that mean for representation? And should we for on TV and outside of major networks? The one thing I wanted to say about Suits, I love her character on Suits. I'm so happy that she is an anti-hero, because she gets to be anti-hero without it, without apology. And usually, anytime that you have a person of color who is quote unquote kind of like the anti-hero, they get punished repeatedly for it. This does not happen to her, because she's like, I'm smarter than all you cats, and you're going to know it. And I love it. And her character expresses her power, and people had issues with her character because they say, oh, she's the strong black woman stereotype. But you have to think about the type of career she is. She is a high-powered lawyer in a mostly male field. So she has to play their game and play it smarter than them. They expect a certain reaction from her. So she gives them that reaction, but when you see her not around them, you kind of see the ticking of her brain, like, okay, so you think this is how I am, I'm going to turn that around for you.
There is a scene in Suits that happens when Harvey is going down on her for something, and she looks at him and she walks to the front of the office and she points to the mask. And she said, you see this name up here? My name is first. My name is first for a reason. And I have to protect that. To me, that was that implicit conversation of, as a black woman with my name on this door, after a big partnership fight, I'm vulnerable, but I'm gonna do whatever I gotta do to keep it. Whoever comes after me is one thing. Whether it's Pearson Hardman, Pearson Spector, whatever, but my name will be first. And you need to understand that. If you can't get with that program, you can find someplace else to go. And Gina Torres has talked about she's been interviewed and they've asked her, because it's on Tumblr, and somebody made a gift set of an interview where the interviewer asked her specifically whether or not she wants them to be really call out and specific about race. And I give Gina a lot of credit because she gets the look, like what, are you shitting me look? She's just really clear. She's like, no, because it's not about that, because the minute it becomes about that, and I can almost hear her saying, and I'd have to trust the writers to do it right, she gets to play this a certain way that if you know anything about corporate culture, if you know anything about folks of color go into the corporate world, this is the dance you do. And you do it in such a way that if they're going to come at you, they know that there's going to be blood. And you're not going to go down easy. So I think that, yeah, and she is an anti-hero, but in a really good way. In a really good way. And especially with the stuff around Mike, because I would have fired Mike and just been done. Because it was like, he has put you all at risk, not just you, Harvey and Lewis, and the entire firm with this bullshit. Because he is not, I don't like Mike. I really don't like Mike because he is that special snowflake character.
What do you think about his relationship
with Rachel?
With Rachel.
The Rachel relationship is really, it's twisty.
Yeah.
Especially when I saw who they cast Rachel's dad. And I was like, oh, this made you biracial. I mean, I knew, sort of, but I was like, oh, now it's complicated. And I still hate Mike. I'm like, Rachel, you've got some other issues that are more about whether or not you feel worthy of even being in the room.
Also with Rachel, when they hooked up, it's more about her relationship with him now, not what she's going, trying to get into law school and be a lawyer.
Exactly. And her dad was like, well, what are you going to do? Because her dad turned it back on her. He was like, it's not that I didn't support you, it's just you were always dissatisfied. You were always dissatisfied with the job you did. So all I could do is just kind of stand back and let you have those feelings. But it's not that I didn't want to support you. I was just waiting for you to settle down and figure out what you wanted to do. And I was like, God, that sounds like my father. I was like, okay, I've had that talk. So, and she kind of looked slightly devastated, but I was like, no, you don't get to do that. He's right. And the fact that you still didn't stick with, when you didn't get your first choice, and you still didn't stick. But yeah, Mike.
I would really love to segue off of a specific phrase you use, which I think in a lot of ways is one of the many things that I think Sleepy Hollow is doing better than the other two listed here, and that's that in Sleepy Hollow, Ichabod is not treated like the special snowflake in the room. Right. He is called out. But in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Elementary both, they do have that person. I mean, obviously Sherlock, in every iteration there has ever been of Sherlock Holmes, he's always the special one who everybody allows to get away with crap. But even in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., everyone else who does anything wrong, it's, that's okay because they're white. There's a lot of that happens in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
It's a learning experience.
It's okay. Yay!
But I will say that's about Elementary. Over time, he's learned how to appreciate the things that he has done wrong.
Yes.
And Joan just is like, there's a lot of this. And he's learned how to interpret this.
Yes.
Because
and
now
I love
he's like,
that.
yeah, and I get that, and I love that about it. Because
Yes.
it's like, you know what, I would have burned out on this in 6 months. But the way they set that up and the way that he's like, even if it's late, he will actually say, I appreciate and care about the things that you have done in relation to me and where you've put yourself at risk. Thank you so much.
And I love the fact that in a very recent episode, Joan looked at him and said, have you ever noticed that you only say I'm sorry after the shit hits the fan?
Yes.
And he was like, phew.
Right.
But I think he's going to get it. He
Yes,
just hasn't
I
yet.
think he is.
Elementary and both Sleepy Hollow do that, but also the main character, well, up until the last episode of Sleepy Hollow, they're very ride or die for that woman of color in their life. It's okay, you're going to do something, or this is happening to you. I'm going to be here for you, and I'm going to support you while you're going to do this thing. Well, like I said, up until the last episode of Sleepy Hollow, but whatever.
Yeah.
We hope.
Yeah.
Ditch Katrina.
I thought it was very interesting in elementary, like about the ride or die. Like Sherlock was about to be like on his brother, like
He was about to
no.
burn the whole
He was
thing
going
down.
to burn,
Set him on fire.
set everything on
Like,
fire. Because he was like, no, you are not taking my Joan. And it was a very interesting scene between Sherlock and Meg Mycroft. Because Mycroft was saying the only reason why you're acting this way is because you finally found someone that you absolutely care about and who brings out the best in you, and you're scared that that person is going to leave you. And you're not going to know what to do with yourself if you don't have that person. And I felt like that whole situation, that whole storyline with them gives this other side of Sherlock that you don't see as much in the other versions of the story so much. That, you know, yes, he's brilliant, yes, he's, you know, this genius detective, but he needs an audience. He wants that audience. He needs to have someone to demonstrate his brilliance to, and there is this loneliness in him, and which is why he sees this relationship with Joan as much more than just being just a friend, but someone who he can connect and understand him wholly.
And watching the unfolding of her own brilliance
Yes.
Oh,
in
also,
a new field.
it's
That's
not my
cool.
best friend as an Asian person.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And piggybacking off of that, also I think that Sherlock needs to be challenged also. I mean, it would be boring to like just have an echo that, oh, I'm so brilliant. Joan challenges him in a lot of ways, and he respects that.
I've really been enjoying about Sleepy Hollow is the way that they allow male and female characters to have chemistry, but not necessarily set it up as these two are going to get together. That people are allowed to have chemistry, but they aren't. But they're friends. Like that. I mean, and I'm sure at some point they'll probably go the easier route and have like, you know, oh, and now they're gonna get together, and oh. But I'm really enjoying it while they're not setting up relationships, because you don't often see that in television, genre or not, of male and female characters with strong chemistry just being friends, and there's always ends up being like some fucking love triangle somewhere. So I like that while you can totally see all of the people who are, you know, possibly getting shipped right now, they're not doing that, and it's nice to watch the friendships develop back and forth, and that they have the friendships between the sisters, and that while the ex-wife had, you know, like,
Katrina. The
No,
bad
no,
Claire.
not the dead wife,
Witch.
not the dead wife.
Oh,
No,
Tony.
Okay.
Which
That's
is
not her name
girlfriend.
in the show, but that's what I call it.
Which is girlfriend.
You know, while she hasn't interacted with the middle sisters very much, it's not set up as like this, like, okay, her against, you know, that they're not setting up instant rivalries, so that community can help develop.
I'm gonna comment on that, actually, because everybody does focus on Ichabod and Abby because they do have a lot of chemistry, and it's all well there what they think. But Irving and what? Channing is her name in the show.
No. He has chemistry with Abby's sister too, because there was
That
a
is
moment.
Jenny.
Yeah.
Jenny.
We're not talking about that.
Oh, Jenny. I heard Channing. I'm like, damn, what?
That could work.
That's just no.
Hold on.
Irving and Jenny. That's one of the things I really liked about the show is when Irving and Jenny have this kind of interaction for like one episode. They're just really kind of flirty, and it's like, oh, this looks interesting. But there's a scene where Tony walks into the room, and
Joe Marie Scott.
Joe Marie, Mrs. Irving, former Mrs. Irving, fine, whatever. But she walks into the room and she sees Jenny and Irving, and she sees that chemistry there, and instead of immediately going, well, we have a daughter, and this is inappropriate, she kind of looks and goes, oh, okay. And then she continues on with what she had to say because there's something more important going on.
Right.
There's the issue of when are you going to be able to spend time with our daughter?
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, when are you going to get this demon out of our daughter? And with Ichabod and Abby, we have a world to save. Yeah, you cute, but we have a world to save. So let's worry about that first before we worry about other things.
Although I do submit that the love triangle is already there. And that is Katrina, Abby, and Ichabod. Regardless of whether it's friendship or not, that it's the depth of feeling that he's challenged by, that he holds not just for his wife, but for this person that he just met. And it's not necessarily about sex or whatever, because it went from I'm depending on you to get me through like this whole thing after you threatened to shoot me on episode 1, but to introduce me to this new world, and you actually obviously have caring enough to show me this new world through your eyes. When she takes him to a baseball game, like the stuff that I like, I'm learning what you like, and then the depth of caring of, and I hate the fact that she ends up in purgatory. But when he first is like, I'm not going to leave you here, that depth of feeling is because even Katrina looked at him like, and I was like, yeah, he's been out here with her for like the past however many months, dude. You haven't been here, you've been getting really shitty information, like Vincent the dog on Lost.
Worst witch ever.
Worst witch ever. Worst Quaker witch ever. She's a shitty Quaker too. Stinks at it. But you have to understand, like, he's been without you this long. And so some of that affection, that need, and all that is still going to be there that you don't always get with a good friend. But you do get it with other people. He even went into Jenny, and him trying to facilitate, he's like Jenny and Abby's therapist.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, now, come on. You girls talk, and they're both like, really, we'll shoot you. But it's there. I submit that it is, to a degree, just not in the way that we're used to seeing it, which is somebody's in bed.
Well, I just wanted to mention as well that to me it's so significant to have the character who's our viewpoint character in the show, Abby, being a woman of color, being the person we're rooting for in that kind of triangle. Like, we don't get that.
Yeah, we never get to root for
We
her.
never got to be that girl before.
And that she is worth saving.
Worth saving, and like even with this thing that we always see with the romance being set up and everything, women of color didn't get that. We didn't get those characters, and to me, like people will accuse that of being a Mary Sue-ish thing. Just fucking give us Mary Sue. We never got Mary Sue. Like that is a revolutionary act to have wish fulfillment for women of color in genres. Like that's huge. So I think.
Somebody else had a question?
Sort of going along with Gabby is saying, what's really remarkable to me about Abigail is that she's the chosen one. I can't think of another TV show where a woman of color is the chosen one.
The chosen one, the witness.
Yeah, chosen by God. So, like, how does... I don't know, this is really huge, and maybe it's more of a comment, but if you want to talk about it.
No, that is, and I hate trying to put, so I'm just going to talk loud. That is a big thing, because I had never seen it in my lifetime. The chosen one, and you didn't die before the end of episode 1. You were alive by episode 2. Holy crap, you were alive in episode 13. Possibly in purgatory, but alive by episode 13. We never got to see that you were chosen, and that you were destined to save the world. That was like, no, that was never going to happen. You usually fell by the wayside. Possibly in episode 11.
You would have to be a sacrifice.
You'd have to be a sacrifice, and you would willingly sacrifice yourself. Because there was the part of me that was like, I kind of hope that Abby would look at Ichabod and say, motherfucker. Do not leave me here once we have this map to find your girl. Do you understand me? Like, I really don't want to be here forever. Yes, I'm going to go ahead and do this for you now, but there's whichever. You know, and I choose to believe that there's more for Katrina somewhere. Right now, it's just sad. But yes, chosen one, awesome.
With the scene in Purgatory, I just had this thought, like right now, like bring epiphany, sparks and stuff. It's interesting that when they go to Purgatory and they were like, well, Purgatory's gonna try and tempt you with the things that you love the most. And so Ichabod sees, he doesn't see his wife, he sees his dad. His old life. And that's the thing that's like, that's supposed to trick him into eating that blood pie, whatever stuff.
Yeah.
And staying in Purgatory. And then but even that is still like a bad situation, but even in Purgatory, Abby's still kind of tempted with something good, because she gets to see Andy and her old mentor, and it's like, oh, this is comfortable, this is nice.
This is family.
Right, this is family, and that's how they try to tempt you. That's just took a spark in my head, and I thought that was really cool.
With her spirit guide.
Right.
Really, because Clancy Brown as a spirit guide is the best thing ever. I just want him to come back and be sitting behind a desk, like in the middle of the forest. Just talking to Abby. Desk in the forest. Desk in the forest, yes! That would be the best thing, with a little lamp and everything, and Abby's like, what is this? And he's like, sit down.
I'm like, the lamp is on in the daytime. Like, you have to turn it on and be like,
and he's just with there some pie. And he's like, have some pie, Abby. She's like, no.
Was there any other questions or? Okay.
Do you think that it's still better to have women of color represented in a bad way than to not have them at all? Or
Yes.
does it perpetuate bad stereotypes though?
It depends on what you call bad. You know, I mean, this is one of the things where we actually have to watch a couple episodes to figure out where it might be going. But we're like everybody else. We have good days, bad days. Some of us want to blow up the world just because. We need the power to blow up the world and have minions and all that other stuff. I think if we try to go for the happy-go-lucky, always noble, that falls into a different trope that's even more dangerous for me, of always being good.
I would like to add, from a purely academic perspective, W.E.B. Du Bois, I'm never sure if you're supposed to pronounce it French or not. One of the critical things he said when he was discussing race was that as long as, I'm trying to think of how to put it, that essentially that as long as the only thing we concentrate on is race, then we will continue to see race. But I think especially in TV and film, that if you're going to try and get people to not be racist, you have to be willing to explore all of the possibilities, rather than only having positive role models. It's okay to have just an absolute bitch of a woman, as long as she's a really well-written character.
Yeah.
But just my thought.
Oh, and also for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you know, Skye, she's half Chinese. The actress is half Chinese.
Yes. But they haven't addressed it in the show.
Other than she
Keanu
was found
Reeves
in
her.
China. I mean, that's the only thing that they brought up,
Well,
but that she was
and
found
that-
in China.
And that she's a monster.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Well, a
So
child of
we're waiting to
monster.
see on that one.
Right. I think, just going to your first question, I know one trope that I really can do less without is this torture porn that seems to happen to black women in TV shows, that they constantly get bombarded with horrible things happening to them. And I see that in so many shows, and I think, okay, we already know what you feel about True Blood. So, I'm gonna hold up a sign that says True Blood.
Oh. Somebody just brought up American Horror Story cover.
A story of terrible witches.
Terrible.
Terrible witches on
Shitty,
TV.
shitty witches.
So apparently they're the descendants of the Salem witches, which
Well, no, they explained it in the show. The people who were actually accused of being witches in Salem weren't the actual witches. There was another group of witches who were kind of hiding in the background going, kill those people! You got them like chilling out. Sitting in the cut trying to stay safe or whatever. But the big issue that has been pointed out so many times about American Horror Story, and my mistake was I binge watched it, so it made it worse.
Oh, God.
I'm so sorry.
You have 2 black female witches on the show. And basically, they're not supposed to be the bad guys. They're supposed to be, well, you would think they're not supposed to be the bad guys. They're supposed to be, part of this group. You have Queenie, who's trying to deal with being the only black witch in this area, and everybody's kind of rejecting her because she's big and because she's black. And they're like, oh, you can't be supreme, this, that, and the other. And the whole supreme thing is stupid. But, so she's trying to push back against that, but she's got her own things that she has to deal with, and they give her power. Her power is basically torture porn. It's I'm a human voodoo doll. If I hurt myself, you feel it instead of me feeling it. Which in theory it's like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool, but at the same time I have to harm myself in order to hurt you. And then you have Marie Laveau, who I've said before, her whole life, she sells her soul to Papa Legba, who isn't the actual iteration of Papa Legba. He's basically the devil, but they make him Papa Legba in the show because voodoo. That's how voodoo works apparently. But she sells her soul to him so she could be immortal. And the whole time she's immortal, she is taking care of her people. She's making sure that these other witches are staying out of their business. She's making sure that everybody in her neighborhood set up. They got food, we got money, we got this, we got that. We don't have to worry about nothing. Everything, as long as we're here, we're good. And both of those characters are going through some really serious things, but the character that they want you to sympathize with is Marie Lalaurie, who tortured people. She tortured babies. And when Queenie deceives her, Queenie's the bad guy, because Queenie shouldn't have sold her out to Marie Laveau. When Marie tortures her, oh, well, Marie should have been a bigger person or whatever. And even at the end of the show, Marie ends up being punished after all of the good she's done with Marie Lalaurie. Like, now you guys are stuck together forever. This woman who tortured and killed your lover, the person who you were in love with, you get to be with her forever, and you get to harm her children, even though you don't want to harm her children.
Yeah.
And like, I love bad guys, and it would have been cool if Marie Laveau was a straight up hardcore badass, but instead they just used her and Queenie as plot devices, and that's where there's the problem.
Yeah. I want to get back to your question about Sky, because I think it's a complicated conversation that we have yet to have about some Asian actors and how they come into Hollywood. Because I'm thinking in particular of Keanu Reeves. And then Kristen
Pruitt.
Thank you, Kristen
Oddly,
Pruitt.
it's related to so many white people in that show.
Right. And I also don't want to hijack that conversation because it's not my heritage. I know that when I see it, I'm kind of like, could this have been different if this person felt safe enough to identify fully within the industry? I think that's where it begins. It's like, if you're willing to take this part and push a little, and you have producers who are willing to let you be that fully Asian part of yourself, what would that look like? But I think, and I think that, and especially if they're mixed race. I mean, I think that we've got a couple of different conversations that are happening here, and so that's one of those things where it's like, you want to look at people and go, like, what's going on for you? We can't vet your identification, because in a way it sets us all up to vet the identification. And at the same time, it also sets up the erasure of the actual heritage. So it's such an incomplete answer, but I think it's something that's worth exploring.